Okay, hello everybody. I can't really see you, but hopefully you can see me. I'm going to talk about the work I've been doing in terms of assessment for learning and Google Documents. My name is James Mickey, and I blog at jamesmickey.com.blog. So a bit over with, and I will move swiftly on. So in terms of what I've been doing, I've been trying to use Google Docs to improve the way that I assess my students' work, particularly in terms of formative assessment, and trying to help encourage them to improve their work and develop their writing skills. Just for your sort of reference and background, I teach both English and media studies. This process has kind of evolved over time and began a couple of years ago, mainly through me sort of experimenting with Google Documents, trying it out, trying to get students to collaborate, to share their work, and I started to develop a practice around assessing their work, both live in lessons and also after they submitted work and not really homework. The classroom sort of implementation and experimentation evolved into me sharing some of those experiences on my blog and via Twitter, and I started to read a little bit of the work that Tom Barrett and Oliver Quinlan had also been doing, using Google Docs in their primary classrooms. I started with an MA module like 6 months ago. And from based inquiry, I also looked in Google Docs and to sort of validate research around what I was doing. That continued there, and Skype chats and sort of developing those areas that I could to move the practice forward. So what I'm going to kind of present very kind of briefly is sort of where my thinking is at currently and what my findings are based on this various different routes of experience that I've had in sort of using Google Docs with my students. The main sort of benefit and one of the biggest wins that has come from using Google Docs is that I can really feel that I can target support and intervene with students, particularly by different abilities, because obviously each student is working in their own document, and I can kind of go in very unobtrusively, very kind of quietly, and work with that student, improving their writing skills. It's been particularly effective with Year 7 and Year 8 in kind of helping them improve their writing, looking at things like grammar, punctuation and spelling. So it's worked very much in that way. To use the words of Tom Barrett, he describes it as a sort of live marking process or quiet monitoring. And it really is fantastic to be able to kind of target students one-on-one and give them a little bit more direct support within their writing as they're building it. So that's, you know, and for some students that takes a while to get used to, but it's been a quite progressive experience. This isn't to say that face-to-face feedback and discussion doesn't take place though. One of the other wins that I found is that it has led to me kind of changing the way that I group students in the classroom, even though I'm in an IT-based room, that I will put students together, and that offers opportunities for collaboration and to discuss, and I can sit down with groups if similar issues are coming up, and we can kind of discuss those issues and ways of like solving them. So they're not just getting teacher feedback, but they're also starting to talk to each other. So ultimately, what I've tried to develop is a practice that's built around teacher, peer, and self-assessment, as perhaps you would do in any normal classroom. But in this process, I've tried to build in specific tasks where the students are sharing documents. And then one of the benefits in terms of the peer and the self-assessment is that the work can continue outside the classroom because the documents are in the cloud and the students can access them from home. So that's allowed that area to kind of evolve further. It's also meant that I've done a lot of modelling and sort of guiding in terms of how to assess work with students. Having my own computer hooked up to the whiteboard, I've been able to very, very quickly share students' work that's been successful, and also pick out pointers and ways that students' work could be improved, and also then to involve other students in that process. So it's a very supportive environment that I feel is generated by sharing documents and collaborating with each other in this way. To use a quote from Oliver Quinlan, he described it as a sustained conversation about the effectiveness of their writing, and that's something that I've really seen from students. They talk very, very effectively about their work in this process, and they do opt to do it in different similar experience to what Oliver kind of found, was that some students very much liked using the chat to kind of, you know, look at what they were doing and to discuss it that way. Other students turned around in their chairs and talked freely to each other and then went back to editing their documents kind of at the same time. So it was opening up a slightly more independent approach to how they looked at their writing and how they worked with each other to assess what they were doing. So this kind of gives an overview of what I think is happening in my classroom now from the sort of model that I've set up. So on the left you can see that I have the teacher assessment, and it happens synchronously or asynchronously depending on when I ask students to have work in and what's going on in my classroom. And as I mentioned earlier, that is a very differentiated and focused form of assessment from me for each of the students. What has also occurred is that I do a lot of modelling and scaffolding in terms of their work and teaching them how to do assessment. My Year 10s and Year 11s are excellent at assessment now because it's been modelled so often one-to-one within their own documents and also on the whiteboard, sharing what they're doing in class. Along with that, then I've also tried to introduce peer assessment and collaboration within that process so they are assessing their own work. And what I found, particularly with my Year 11 group at this stage, having had sort of almost 2 years of using Google Docs in this way, is that they now edit work rather than redraft. It's an editing process, not a redrafting process, which is a quite slightly different skill for an English teacher to teach, I think. And they've also become far more self-reflective and able to evaluate their work because of the modelling that goes on in terms of how assessment happens, and they can see it direct with their own work and move their work forward. And I think that's one of the most important things about AFL for me, is that you have to make the sort of assessment meaningful, and then the response from the students has to be instant. And marking their work in this way allows them to respond to their work instantly and to make improvements, so progress happens very, very quickly. So it is a reflective and evaluative process. Just to round up, I think, that is the main thing. What I'm trying to achieve is a particular degree of metacognition from the students, and being able to get into their work directly one-on-one has kind of pushed that along in a direction that I didn't really see it happening before. I went through various strategies, but I think that the students didn't make as much progress before I was using Google Docs to do this. Because they could respond instantly, they made more progress, and that then built naturally onto peer assessment and self-assessment practices. And here's just a couple of links. The slides are available on my blog if you want them. Search either Tom Barrett's or Oliver Quinlan's blog and you'll find lots of information on Google Docs and assessment, and the same online. I hope you found that useful and informative. Thank you very much.
Good timing.